When we adopt a dog and bring it into our home, it's often a younger animal. In those situations, especially while dealing with house training and basic obedience, we often don't consider the challenges of caring for the pet in its senior years. This is Mike Fitz, resident naturalist with Explore.org, the world's largest live nature cam network. Today, we're actually not talking about wildlife, we're talking about domestic dogs, specifically older dogs and the dedication, challenges, and joys associated with caring for them. To help me explore this topic, my special guests today are Zina Goodin, co-founder from the Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary, and RJ Olivastro, dog care manager at Old Friends. So Zina, RJ, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary is a nonprofit organization located in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. They're dedicated to providing lifetime homes and care to senior dogs. These are animals that sometimes don't get as adopted as frequently as younger animals. So Old Friends does a lot of work to make sure that that older dogs are given quality homes and quality care through their senior years. If you have questions for Zina or RJ about their efforts to care for older dogs, or maybe you have an older dog at home and you're wondering just maybe if they could provide any tips to help you out, you can submit those in the comments on the live chat page on Explore.org, and we'll do our best to try to answer those for you towards the end of the chat. But Zina, can you tell me just a little bit about Old Friends and how it got its start?
Yes, sure. We are now 7 years old. We just celebrated our 7-year anniversary. In the early 2010, my husband and I started to volunteer for a Golden Retriever rescue group. And as we volunteered with them more and more and worked with them more and more, we discovered that even senior Golden Retrievers were not finding homes in their retirement years. And we were realizing that other dogs who were not maybe a purebred or a desirable breed were never making it out of the shelters. So in early 2012, we started Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary.
And how many dogs? Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
We got nonprofit status in early 2012.
And how many dogs do you typically care for at a time? When we watch the cameras on Explore.org, I see a lot, but it's difficult for me to actually get a number just by looking at the camera feeds.
We currently have 87 dogs here and over 200 foster homes. So we are caring for all of them. The dogs in our forever foster homes are cared for as adopted dogs would be, but we provide vetting, medication, and preventatives for the rest of the dog's life. We have had as many as 140 dogs here. We didn't know really how many was too many until we did it. And we have learned that staying under 100 dogs is a really good fit for us here.
And RJ, since you care for dozens of dogs at a time, how do you keep the peace, so to speak, amongst all of those animals?
Well, we have meet and greets with all the new dogs. They come in and they go into an intake area, and the medical team looks them over. They're typically there for 5 to 10 days, and then they're moved into a reception area, which is much calmer and with fewer dogs. And if they do fine for a couple of days in reception area, then we go ahead and move them back into what we call general population, which is where the lion's share of the dogs are. About 10% of them are kept in separate rooms. They all have their own rooms, the 10%. And, when weather permits, which is the overwhelming majority of the time, we go ahead and move them outside, and they have private yards. We also have occasional timeouts. Like people, dogs all have their own personalities, and sometimes they have a bad day.
That was one thing that I was wondering about. How often you have to sort of adjust to the individual personality and disposition of the animals.
It's not often. We've been blessed that way, but there are, some dominant males or dominant females that don't mix well with others, and they get their own rooms and their own yards, and we move forward.
And I guess maybe we could introduce the couple of friends that you have on your laps right now. We actually, I forgot to mention those at the beginning, but you got a couple of friends with you. Could you tell us a little bit about their stories?
So this on my lap is Jed. He came to us close to a year ago, and we were told that he was a hospice case. He didn't know any different. You couldn't tell him that. He just finished up his last round of chemo. He's a rat terrier. I would guess that he's, 11 or 12 years old. He's doing really, really well. And then Zina has Tiny on her lap.
And Tiny just was returned from a forever foster home. We do have an open door policy with our forever fosters. If something doesn't work out, we'll take them back right away. And Tiny actually went after the family rabbit and didn't fit in real well with the home for that reason. So she's back here and she's looking for a new forever foster home, but she's doing real well with the group of dogs we have here in the reception area.
And we'll have an opportunity to talk more about your fostering and adoption process a little bit later on. But since you are caring for a lot of dogs in their older years, one thing that many pet owners struggle with, doesn't matter if they're an old dog or a young dog, but that's really just providing medication to their pets. So what tips and suggestions do you have for people who have pets who maybe stubbornly refuse medication? And pets can be pretty stubborn, within my experience, trying to take meds.
Yeah, that is can be true. It's rare that we can't get a dog to eat its medicine with its food that it's served, but it does happen. We use pill pockets. Sometimes they're called pill assists. We use chicken meatballs, plain yogurt, baby food, and if they still won't take their pill via that method, we have pill poppers, and if that doesn't work, we pill the dog, and by that I mean we hold their jaws open and we put their medicine on the back of their tongue. We close their jaws shut, and then we rub their throats until they swallow the medicine.
It seems like one trick that you have up your sleeve is a homemade stew that you like to prepare. And it's, if you want the recipe for that, you can go to their website, ofsds.org. It's a big recipe. It's for a lot of dogs. But I'm actually kind of curious about the stew. Can you tell me just the audience a little bit about what's in it and maybe how it is inspired? And was there really any experimentation that happened before you settled on this recipe?
Well, I can let the audience know what's in it, and Zina would be better to touch on the inspiration and what's behind it. So anti-stew consists of apples, sweet potatoes, carrots, green beans, chicken, pumpkin, plain yogurt, whiting fish, turmeric, psyllium powder, and coconut oil. And we cook them in crock pots during the day. And their cooking instructions are there on the website. Naturally, we're cooking for a much larger group than anybody else would be.
There's also a scaled down version on the website for normal sized families.
I was actually kind of curious about the turmeric. Is that for color, or is that actually for flavor? Do dogs prefer it with that spice in it?
Turmeric actually has some antioxidant qualities to it. It's very healthy. People will take it as a supplement.
And follow-up question on that too. So how did you decide on that recipe? Really, how was it inspired?
We've been using the recipe since about 2010 in our family. And working with our veterinarian, we've been adding ingredients and changing ingredients for quite a while. I think we've got it to a pretty final recipe now. We know how much fits in the crock pot, so that's how we get our quantities. But it has been worked on with our veterinarians through the years.
And if there's anyone out there, considering adopting an older dog, what should they keep in mind? Are there any tips that you would say, hey, these are definitely considerations that you should think of before you adopt an older dog?
Sure, some may be obvious, maybe some others maybe not so much. You're looking at more than likely a shorter lifespan from when you would foster a senior dog. They're perhaps more set in their ways and more likely to be on or soon be on medication, and physical and or mental limitations may present themselves. That's all things to keep in mind.
So those are I think a few of the unique challenges. Is it kind of along those lines though? Is it how often are you able to sort of like teach an old dog new tricks? Especially with obedience, you might have older dogs who are sort of set in their ways. You said that before you will give some of the more dominant dogs just their own personal space, but is there a way to sort of reintroduce them to the pack or to the herd, so to speak? So some of the animals are able to socialize more often.
There is, and we initially try that route. If we've tried and it's been unsuccessful several times, then we do end up separating them. But the majority of the time, I mean, that is why we only have maybe 9 or 10 dogs that have their own areas. The majority of the time, we are able to introduce them to the pack, and they are able to find their spot in the pack and continue to be out with everybody, and come and go as they want outside, and socialize with the 90% of the other dogs that we have here. Some can be set in their ways, but old dogs can learn new tricks. We've got countless examples to show us that here.
And we're approaching about halfway through our chat right now. So if you're joining us just a little late, I'll take this opportunity to reintroduce ourselves. My name is Mike Fitz, resident naturalist with explore.org. And I am joined today by Zina Goodin and RJ Olivastro from the Old Friends Senior Dog Sanctuary in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. And we're talking about the care of senior dogs and a lot of their efforts that they go through at Old Friends to make sure that these dogs have healthy and loving homes. And if you have questions for them, please do feel free to drop those in the chat on the live events page on explore.org, and our moderators from Explore will be happy to send those questions in our direction. We've talked about some of the challenges associated with caring for older dogs, but what advantages does caring for an older dog present for pet owners, especially compared to what you would have with a younger dog?
Great question. Thank you for asking that. Senior dogs need homes as badly, if not more so, than younger dogs. Fostering a senior dog may in fact save its life. Older dogs are usually somewhat trained and understand basic commands, and older dogs have a greater attention span, and as we mentioned earlier, can learn new tricks. They make instant companions. They don't need as much training, and they're very loyal animals.
And what is the fostering process and adoption process like for dogs who are at Old Friends? Can you walk us through that just a little bit?
Sure. We give tours 3 days a week. it's a great experience for the general public to come in and meet all the dogs and tour the sanctuary. We recommend a potential foster do that so that they can meet each dog and each dog can meet them. It's much more beneficial and it happens more organically than somebody seeing a dog on the website and thinking that that's the right dog for them, which may not necessarily be the case. So after the potential foster has completed a tour, we revisit who they're interested in, and then Zina, the dog care team, the medical care team, and our foster coordinators sit down and we discuss, that dog and whether it's the right environment for he or she, and then we come to a decision as a committee and move forward. So we also do a home visit with a checklist, and that's after medical and dog care gives a clearance, green light that dog for that environment. And of course, if the audience doesn't already know, Old Friends provides free vet care for the remainder of the dog's life. Covers medicine, prescription food. We provide bowls, leashes, collars, blankets, beds, diapers, whatever that dog may need.
And if somebody is interested in fostering or adopting a dog from Old Friends, they must be within 100 miles of Nashville, Tennessee. Is that correct?
It is. That's correct. If a existing foster moves outside of that range, it's a case-by-case basis, but we usually give them an option to fully outright adopt that dog. Of course, they would take on any expenses, since we would probably be too far for them to come see our in-house vet, etc.
And are you either of you particularly fond of any of the dogs at Old Friends right now? I mean, it might be kind of difficult. It's probably like asking a parent to choose between her kids. But do you have any that you are particularly fond of?
It is a difficult question to answer. I tend to be fond of the dogs that are separate from everybody else because of physical, mental, or behavioral issues. They've taught me a lot about kindness and patience and compassion. And we, as a staff, we try to take time out of our days to spend, to give them some quality time and attention. And, we've got enrichment tasks, clipboards outside of all their rooms. So we go out of our way to give them some TLC.
Now,
I think that, yeah. Sorry, please go ahead.
I have a dog here that comes and goes home with me every day called Barry. And Barry has separation anxiety. So he stays with me wherever I go. He comes to work with me. He goes home with me. He goes almost everywhere with me. Sometimes he stays here. So Barry's my guide. And other than that, everybody has something special about him.
I'm sure it's very, very easy to get attached to many of the animals that you're caring for. And RJ, I mean, you really did say an important point earlier about how they can teach us a lot about patience and friendship. I think that's one of the most important things about pets, is that they really do in a lot of ways give us unconditional love, and they don't ask for a whole lot in return. I mean, they'll love us even though we might not treat them all that well. So it's I mean, I end up really taking solace in when I'm feeling down, thinking about people's pets and how those pets really just kind of love other people regardless of the situation in times. And it's especially uplifting when you see that relationship between a good dog owner and somebody who or a good dog owner and their pets, and how they really do love each other.
Absolutely, Mike. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think they make us better people.
Yeah.
And before we get to some audience questions, one thing that I wanted to ask both of you is, what can someone do to support your organization? Maybe they don't live in in Tennessee or in the Nashville area. I know there's one thing that everyone can do is just enjoy the dogs on explore.org. You can go to the Old Friends Senior Dog Cams. There's at least 3 of them that show different parts of your facility. So that's one thing. But what else could the audience do to support your organization?
We rely on our audience to spread the word about us, share us with your friends and your family. We, of course, always take donations, and whatever word that people can spread about the value of having a senior dog in your life is a big benefit to us.
And if you're looking for their website, it is ofsds.org. So if you're curious about what that is, please go visit that website. I do have, looks like a few questions from the audience in our queue here. So let's see what, I've been glancing over my shoulder once in a while to check those out. And we'll try to answer as many of these as we can in the time remaining. So we'll be with you for another, 9 to 10 minutes or so. One person is wondering, what are some tips that you might have for anyone who might have a dog who is going blind?
Blindness is not a big disability for most dogs. They will get used to their surroundings. Blindness is not their primary sense. They also rely on hearing and smell. So unlike people, losing their sight is not as big of a deal to them as it would be to us. If you have a dog going blind, don't change things around too much. Be patient. A lot of tactile, a lot of touch is always helpful.
And another question is, there are many viewers who would like to foster dogs, but of course they live outside of the Nashville area. So have you ever thought about teaming up with vets in other states to provide care for dogs to foster them outside of your local area? I know that might be a bit of a logistical challenge, but maybe you could, at least reiterate how you came to that methodology and that policy about, the 100-mile radius of within your sanctuary.
When we first started out, we did allow dogs to be fostered out farther distances away. The travel is stressful on the dog, and some of those dogs have had to come back to us, and it was a lot of trouble getting them back to us. We do provide vet care on site with our own vet. It's very expensive to pay other vets to take care of the dogs in our program, and we do like to keep a handle on what kind of care the dogs are getting, because they are older and have a lot of special needs. We keep very, very busy with people just in our area, and we are able to foster out as much as we need to. So it has worked really well for us. We encourage people to go to their local shelters if they want a senior dog in another area. And we do encourage people to start senior dog rescues. We've had some workshops to help people to do that.
And can you explain just a few of the treatments used on some of the dogs at Old Friends? Maybe behavioral treatments. The question is not that specific. That's kind of my caveat. But yeah, could you explain some of those maybe behavioral ways that you help to train the animals?
Sure. I mean, all of our caretakers and lead caretakers know of training tips and take time out to work with dogs behaviorally. It usually requires us going into a separate yard and working with that dog. We also have a few qualified volunteers that come in and work with the dogs. And then periodically we have professional trainers come in on an as needed basis. medically, we have started using laser therapy treatment for some of the dogs that are arthritic, just come back from, post-surgery. And it seems to be, I would say 90% of the time, it seems to be very, very helpful in helping the dog recover. And it gets them back to their old selves quicker.
We also have acupuncture here on a bi-weekly basis. We have an outside vet come in and do acupuncture.
Oh, so you're using, it sounds like a wide variety of treatments there. You've mentioned many times during the chat that you will give them full veterinary care. So that runs the gamut, even on some of those cutting edge technologies for pets. Do bonded pairs ever get fostered to get together, and excuse me, let me rephrase that. The actual question is, how often do bonded pairs get forever fostered?
They're tougher to get foster because you're getting two, but we have had several bonded pairs go together. We do have a couple of fosters that have been very good to us, and will take on bonded pairs as needed. So yeah, it is tougher to get multiple dogs foster versus one. We do again have fosters that will reach out to us and ask us about a dog, and before the process is over and done with it, they're leaving with multiples.
And this is a question specifically for RJ. Someone wants to know if you miss your admirer Tinker now that she has gone to her foster home.
Absolutely. I think about her all the time. We hear that she's doing very, very well, and she's got a new person. So she is keeping her company all the time, and we've heard only good things. We hope to see her soon. Surely she'll be back for vet checkups and that sort of thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing her as everybody else is.
And here's a question about a specific dog that viewers enjoy, Mr. Mister. The viewer says, Mr. Mister makes us laugh just by being him. Does he make the guardians at Old Friends laugh too?
The first couple of weeks I was here working, he seemed to like my feet an awful lot. But that was 2 years ago. And yes, he makes all of us laugh probably on a daily basis.
I often wonder what it's like to have a sense of smell like a dog. I mean, it's much great, probably orders of magnitude beyond a human's. So they live in a world of odors, like brown bears, which is one of the animals that I'm very fond of. They live in a world of odors that we just can't imagine. So they take interest in things that you would never really think, that is not something that a human would pay attention to. But yeah, their sense of smell is so keen that it must be every time they go outside, it just must be a new experience for them. And I don't want to say what was going on with your feet there, but that's kind of an interesting story to tell. We just have a couple more questions in our queue before we end the chat here. Somebody is just wondering, is the mobile vet van in use right now?
Right at this moment, we're bringing some of our vet treatments and things inside so that we can use them more on an emergency basis. But it is out here right in front of the facility, so we can get to it.
And our final question here, have you had any dogs come to the sanctuary alone that have bonded with other dogs?
Absolutely. Countless numbers. They find their buddy. They find who they can sleep on the same bed with. We've got couch buddies, bed buddies. there are a few dogs here that like to play with each other, and they seek each other out so they can play. And yes, absolutely, they've made friends.
Paris and Bentley would
Well,
be one. Sorry.
and those are a couple of dogs that people can see on the cameras right now.
Paris and Bentley would be one pair of dogs that came to us separately and ended up being
Oh,
bonded
okay.
for years now.
Well, I would like to thank Zina and RJ. I thank both of you for joining us today. I learned certainly a lot about the care and the challenges and joys associated with older dogs. I think you've brought up some really important points that older dogs need adopted just as much as younger dogs. So if you're thinking about adopting a pet into your home, consider not only the young pups, but consider those older dogs. There's probably going to be many at the shelters in your local community. If you want to, of course, watch the progress, the exploits, and the challenges of a lot of the dogs at Old Friends, you can go to explore.org. You can look at the Old Friends senior dog cameras there. You can also, of course, visit the website ofsds.org to find more information specifically about Old Friends and their efforts to care for senior dogs. So, RJ, Zina, thank you for joining me on this chat this afternoon.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much. And please visit our Facebook page and our Instagram.
We will do that.